بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah, we'll just get started. We only have like 12 more minutes or so before the Iqamah for Asr prayer, so we're just going to quickly gloss over the review questions, the homework questions which I had provided last week. So, starting with the first question, what does ibadah mean in Arabic? Yes, Ayub. So, what does worship mean? Okay, yes, so we mentioned in Arabic the word ibadah is to submit, to obey, right? And this is what we mentioned last week. Back in the day when slavery was a thing, they would call their slave abd, okay? Because he would do ibadah. He would do what in Arabic is called ibadah, which is to basically obey. They're expected to obey the master, submit to the master. Whatever they tell them to do, they have to do it. Otherwise, there's going to be consequences, right? Now, of course, in Islam, this is only applicable to Allah Azza wa Jal, because we only worship Allah. How is worshipping in Islam unique in comparison to other religions? Yes. It's very good. So other religions, they tend to have specific act of worship at specific days or specific times. Whereas our religion, we mentioned last week, we clarified, Islam is a 24-hour, 7 days a week. From the moment that you wake up to the moment you go to sleep to the moment that you pass away. Every single day, every single moment, you are doing something for the sake of worshipping Allah Azza wa Jal. Even when it comes to basic things like eating, drinking, sleeping, playing, whatnot, you are doing it all so that you can do things which please Allah Azza wa Jal. That is at least a goal for a Muslim. You know that nobody's perfect, of course, but this is what every single Muslim aims for, versus something like, we mentioned last week, I gave an example with Christianity, right? Christianity, the Christians, they do whatever they want. Literally, they do whatever they want throughout the whole week. They just come on Sundays, they confess their sins or whatever, and then they walk out feeling like they've made tawbah, that they're on a clean sheet now, and then throughout the next week they do whatever they want throughout the whole week again. How can a person protect himself from falling into evil desires? We mentioned last week the hadith about the fire and the moths and the insects, right? And the person trying to stop the insects, right? So we talked about the hadith of the concept of evil desires and people wanting to follow the desires thinking that it will do them benefit. So how can a person protect himself from falling into these kinds of desires? Nobody knows. You're telling me if any of you guys now have a desire, an evil desire, you don't know how to stop yourself. Khalas, it's game over. Huh? Nobody knows? Yes? Okay, so remembering Allah Azza wa Jal, saying the adhkar, right? And yes, so following the sunnah, right? Because Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is actually the one who teaches us, right? To say A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim when you feel, for example, angry. The Quran tells us when you feel shaitan, the temptation of shaitan around you, fasta'idh billah, say A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, right? So by following the Quran and by following the sunnah and by just having a relationship with the Quran in general, because the Quran is full of warnings, okay? And what are these warnings meant to do? They're meant to put you back in your place, to make you feel like, okay, yes, you're feeling a temptation of desires, and then Allah Azza wa Jalla comes to remind you that if this is what you do, this is what's going to happen at the akhirah. Versus if you hold yourself, you control your desires, you're going to, فَإِنَّ الْجَنَّةَ هِيَ الْمَأْوَى, then Jannah shall be your final destination, right? Why is it important to reflect over the warnings in the Quran? I sort of kind of already talked about it right now, but someone wants to give it a shot. Yes? Sorry? Right. So it's kind of connected to the previous question, like in a sense that we just explained, right? They're meant to stop us from falling into impulsive desires. Because as we mentioned last week, we as human beings, we naturally seek to just to be satisfied at all times. We want to feel happy. We want to feel pleased. You never want to feel bored. You never want to feel, you never want to be broke. You never want to be feeling any kind of negative emotion. So you always seek after something that's positive. Now, of course, we mentioned certain desires are okay, but certain desires are not. And not just every single desire that pops in my head, I want to do this, I want to do that, I just simply act upon that. So the Quran is a very effective method to stop us, to put these desires under control, so that we don't just blindly follow every single desire that comes to our mind. Because when we start once again reading the verses about Jahannam, for example, when you start reading the verses about the day of judgment or the hisab, the questioning of Allah Azza wa Jal, you start to feel like, okay, what's going to happen to me when I am there? What's going to happen to me when I stand in front of Allah or at the day of judgment? How is it going to be for me? So these verses, they tend to put you, again, back in your place, so that you don't have that, or at least you have something that's preventing you from jumping right into this desire that you get. So we mentioned last week, we talked about a little bit of we talked about the conditions of salah. A person does not pray on time with the excuse that he's tired. And we mentioned basically one of the conditions of prayer is having a healthy mind. So his excuse is, I'm tired, so I don't have a healthy mind. Is this a valid excuse? And you have to explain the answer. Yes, in the front. So your answer is correct, but the explanation is completely wrong. Can someone explain to me why is this not valid? Yes, you. Exactly. Jazakallah khair. What we mentioned last week, having a healthy mind means you know what is right, what is wrong. Okay, you have a functioning mind. Okay, some people have, and may Allah protect us, they have a severe mental kind of illness. They can't do basic human functionality. They need people to go, they need a helper or a nurse or something, or someone, a family member, to go and help them out at all times, because they're not able to do even the basic functionality. Those people, they can say they don't have a healthy mind. However, just me saying, oh, wallah, I just had a big exam, I'm feeling kind of, not that good, I'm feeling a little bit dizzy, or I just had a big shawarma, and I'm feeling a little bit, sleepy after eating all this. This is not an excuse. Okay? If even being sick is not an excuse for you to miss your prayer, even though you don't feel good or healthy when you aren't sick, but you still have to go and pray. A person wanted to pray at the park. He laid out a prayer mat and he prayed. After he finished his prayer, he noticed that underneath the mat there was some dog poop. So is his prayer valid? Why or why not? Nobody else from the girls want to try? Yes? Jazakumullah khair. Yes, the prayer is valid. Because what's important is the surface that you pray on. So as long as, this is why I recommended last week, wherever you go, take with you a clean, of course, assuming the prayer mat is clean and pure, of course. You take with you a prayer mat so that you just put it wherever you are, in the parking, on the road, in the park, in the mall, wherever. And you know for sure that my mat is clean. And so I don't have any risk that I'm praying somewhere that has filth and najasa in it. What did the Quraysh discuss in their top secret meeting? Yes, in the front. Very good. We mentioned last week that the Quraysh were feeling threatened, seeing all the Muslims migrating, seeing that the message of Islam was not stopping. They decided they need to do something. So they were discussing. Some of them said, why don't we lock him up in the house? One of them said, why don't we kick him out of Mecca? And then, of course, they agreed upon killing him. They said, why don't we just go and kill him? And they made the whole plan, right? We discussed that last week. Why was Asma binti Abi Bakr given the title of Dhatun Nitaqain? I mentioned this clearly last week. I remember. Yes, in the front. Jazakumullah khair. Very good. Dhatun Nitaqain literally translates to she of the two waist belts. Okay? And why is she given that title? Because she had a waist belt and there was the food and the water that she was in a hurry. She wanted to quickly tie the food for Prophet Muhammad and it's loaded on the camel, but she realized, there was nothing she had, so she took her own waist belt, she tore it into two pieces, and she used one piece to tie the food and another piece to tie the drink. And so since then, this is from an authentic hadith, she was giving the title of Dhatun Nitaqain. Any questions? Cool. So inshallah, Asr Iqama is in around 2 or 3 more minutes. So we're going to go upstairs very quickly. come back downstairs, and then we will resume the lecture. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Picking up on where we left off. So we're gonna continue from last week. Last week we talked about a little bit about ibadah, and we defined what is ibadah and what constitutes ibadah. So today we're gonna emphasize on that or expand on that a little bit more. We're gonna talk about the types of ibadah and what makes a ibadah called a ibadah, and how can I make my ibadah better. Because a lot of times people complain that I can't seem to be focusing in my prayer. I don't feel it. They say it right. So we're going to talk what is it that we can fix in our ibadat so that we can make it better, inshallah. So the types of ibadah, as the scholars break it down for us, there are two types of ibadah. There is something that we call ibadah kawniyah, a universal ibadah, okay? And bear in mind the definition of ibadah in your mind. Ibadah means to submit, okay? To obey the commands of Allah Azza wa Jal. So there is a universal type of ibadah, and there is a shar'i kind of ibadah, ibadah shar'iyya, a religious kind of ibadah. What do I mean by universal? What do I mean by religious? Universal ibadah includes everything in existence. Because everything in existence submits to the command of Allah Azza wa Jal. We're talking living or non-living, human or non-human, Muslim and non-Muslim. Everything in terms of their creation submits to the will of Allah Azza wa Jal. The sun, or I guess the earth rotates the way it does because Allah Azza wa Jal commanded it to do so. The sun comes from the east and sets in the west because Allah Azza wa Jal commanded it to do so. The moon looks the way it does because Allah Azza wa Jal commanded it to do so. Your own creation, okay? And someone might be wondering, what do I mean by Muslim and non-Muslim submits to the will of Allah? Well, because even our own bodies are submitting to the will of Allah. Our own lives and souls are submitting to the will of Allah Azza wa Jal. Whenever Allah wills our souls to be there, they will be there. When Allah wills for our souls to be taken, they will be taken. When Allah wills for your heart to stop, it will stop. When Allah wills for your heart to continue beating, it will continue to beat. And so on. And Allah Azza wa Jal says in the Quran, إِن كُلُّ مَنْ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ إِلَّا آتِي الرَّحْمَنِ عَبْدًا. Everything within the heavens and the earth, which literally means everything, plants, stars, creations, humans, إِلَّا آتِي الرَّحْمَنِ عَبْدًا, except that they will return to Allah in full submission. Okay? So this is what we call the ibadah kawniyah, universal ibadah, and this applies to every single creation without any exceptions. Next, however, this ibadah kawniyah is out of your control. You cannot control whether you want or not, whether you want your body to submit to the will of Allah. You can't tell your soul, stop listening to Allah. You can't tell your heart, stop listening to Allah. Okay, it's there, and it's gonna do it whether you like it or not. Okay. The other kind of ibadah, however, is the one that concerns us the most, and that is the ibadah shar'iyya, the religious type of worship. Why does this one concern us? Because all of you have a choice whether you want to do that or not. Allah has given you the freedom to choose. You want to worship Allah, you can worship Allah. You don't want to worship Allah, you don't want to pray, you don't want to read Quran, Allah also has given you that choice. So this one is up to you to choose. And how do you submit to the commands of Allah Azza wa Jal? We've been talking about it for the whole time. The commands that are found in the Quran, and by following the sunnah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This type of ibadah only applies for the Muslims, because only the Muslims willingly submit themselves to the commands of Allah Azza wa Jal. We all just willingly went upstairs for Asr prayer and we prayed Asr. Nobody here said, grabbed you by your arm and you're like, hey, you're going to come with me right now, otherwise, something's bad is going to happen to you. You, with your own choice, you willingly went and you decided, I'm going to obey Allah Azza wa Jal when He tells me that there are 5 prayers, I'm going to pray Asr prayer. Good for you. This is what we call ibadah shar'iyya, religious type of worship. And this is what Allah Azza wa Jal praises His servants in the Quran with. And Allah Azza wa Jal, for example, says in the Quran, وَعِبَادُ الرَّحْمَنِ الَّذِينَ يَمْشُونَ عَلَى الْأَرْضِ هَوْنًا. Okay? These are the servants of the most merciful. These are the people who can truly call themselves the servants of Allah, ibadullah. Okay? Those who are walking with humility. And again, there's a whole list of descriptions for these kind of people, but overall, they are submitting themselves to the commands of Allah Azza wa Jal. These are the two types of worship. One of them are out of your control. One of them is within your control. The one that is within your control is the one that you will be questioned on the day of judgment. And that is what will determine Jannah or Jahannam for every single creation, for every single, human being. Now, what is it that constitutes an act of worship? There are certain pillars that make up any kind of worship, whether that is Quran, Salah, Siyam, Sadaqah, everything. There are certain pillars that have to exist. Without these kinds of pillars, then the deed might get counted, but it may not have any weight. Okay? What does that mean? For example, someone might go and pray their 5 daily prayers, and it will be recorded. Allah Azza wa Jal shall not oppress anybody. It will be written down. That person prayed their prayer. But maybe their intention was not sincere. Maybe they were not focusing in the prayer. They were thinking about their lunch and their dinner, or they were thinking about the math question that they are stuck on at school. Okay? And so it will be written that they prayed. But when Allah Azza wa Jal is weighing your good deeds and your bad deeds on the scales of the day of judgment, certain deeds, they will be there, but they don't have any weights. Whereas some small deeds are there, but they will be very heavy. Why? Because it depends on these two pillars. These two pillars are very, very important. And this is what I had meant earlier. When people complain about, oh, I don't really feel it. When I'm reading Quran, I don't feel it too much. Or when I'm in my salah, I'm struggling to find khushu'. It's likely because you are struggling with one of these two pillars. What are these two pillars? Submission and love. Submission and love. What is submission and what is love? What is the context that we are talking about here? Submission is to show humility before Allah Azza wa Jal. To understand that you are literally nothing in front of Allah Azza wa Jal. This is what humility is. To humble yourself, to lower yourself before your Creator. This is what submission is, and that is the essence of ibadah. This is what Islam is all about. You are doing Islam. You are submitting yourself to the will of Allah. So you're saying that I am nothing, Allah is everything. This is what submission is. Now humility, how do I grow humility? There are several things that the more of these that I meet inside me, the more humble a person will become in front of Allah Azza wa Jal. First of all, having humility by realizing that you need Allah Azza wa Jal. And these are all, so these, take note of these things, because this is how you improve your khushu'. This is how you can increase your humility towards Allah Azza wa Jal. First, to realize and to literally think about how much you need Allah Azza wa Jal. None of you right now, as we speak, right now, as you are sitting in the room, none of you will survive a single second if Allah Azza wa Jal did not will it. The air that you are breathing, the food that you ate in the morning, the blood that is flowing through your body, your own eyesight, your speech, your hearing, your talking, everything that you are doing is because Allah Azza wa Jal allowed you to do it. And if Allah Azza wa Jal says and wills and commands for your body parts to stop working, they will stop working whether you like it or not. So to realize that you are in constant, always 24/7, there will never be a split second where you don't need Allah Azza wa Jal. This is one way or one reminder you can have for yourself, so that you can remember that I am in need of Allah Azza wa Jal, and this will naturally show you or just prove the point that you are literally nothing without Allah Azza wa Jal. So this is one way out of need for Allah Azza wa Jal. Another way to humble yourself naturally by making the choice to obey the commands of Allah Azza wa Jal. You're not going to obey the commands of anyone, okay, unless you have a certain type of glorification or a certain type of respect. Okay, so if this is us with human beings, okay, like maybe you respect your teacher, وَلِلَّهِ الْمَثَلُ الْأَعْلَى. You respect your teacher. And therefore, when your teacher, whatever your teacher tells you to do, write this down, don't write this down, stop talking, go out and leave the classroom. You're going to do it. Why? Because you have respect towards your teacher. You understand that your teacher is someone who is greater than you in certain aspects, okay, in knowledge or in age or in wisdom or whatever, and therefore you are willingly listening to what they are telling you to do. This is, of course, a small example when it comes to human beings. What do you think now between you and Allah Azza wa Jal? So now when Allah Azza wa Jal tells you, do this and don't do that, and you humble yourself and you said, yes, Allah, I'm going to do it. Even if you don't like it, and this is the point here. It's easy to do something when you're used to it, or when you don't mind it. Everybody else is fasting, I'm going to fast as well. All of us, we just went upstairs for Asr prayer, so let me just go upstairs and pray Asr prayer. Okay, but what if now what if, for example, we just had Christmas and New Year's. What if Allah is now telling you, it's haram to celebrate Christmas, haram to celebrate New Year's? Now it's like, but I want to, and everybody else is doing it. I have these temptations and I want to do it. Now you're being really tested. Are you humble enough to submit yourself to what Allah Azza wa Jal is commanding you to do? Or is now at this point in time, you don't have any humbleness? That determines your level of submission that you have in your worship. Another factor as well is the amount of love that you have towards Allah Azza wa Jal. Naturally, again, this is if with a human being, for example, you all love your parents, you all love your mom. And so if your mom tells you to do something, you're going to do it because you love your mom. Your mom is like your favorite person in the world. She's the greatest person in your life. So you're going to do it because you love her. If this is your mother who is a human being, then what about the one who created you and the one who gave you your mother in the first place? So the more love you have towards Allah Azza wa Jal, the more you are going to want to please Allah Azza wa Jal. And the more that you're going to dislike doing the haram. And the more you're going to want to, the less you're going to want to disobey Allah Azza wa Jal. And in fact, your desires will start to match with what Allah Azza wa Jal wants you to do. You're not going to desire anymore what Allah doesn't want you to do, what Allah has made haram. Now this is a very high level of love. How do we grow the love? We're going to talk about that. That's the next pillar. But if we grow our love, that will also naturally grow our humility and humbleness and submission towards Allah Azza wa Jal. And the last factor that we'll mention, very important, to feel regret when you fall into sins. Because you see, we are all human beings. There is not a single perfect human being in existence. There's the hadith, كل بني آدم خطاء. Every single son of Adam shall commit sins. It's part of your existence, it's part of your nature. One day, or at one point, you're going to fall and you're going to slip. It happened to people who are better than you. It happened to people who were Sahaba. It happened to some prophets. Okay? Even the prophets, yes. The prophets, we mentioned previously, they're protected from major sins. But even some prophets, they fell into minor sins. But the prophets, as soon as they fall into minor sins, and this is the key point here, as soon as they fall into sins, they immediately turn back to Allah Azza wa Jal, asking Him for forgiveness and feeling shame and regret out of the sin that they have done. Allah Azza wa Jal describes al-muttaqeen in the Quran. Okay? There's many verses in the Quran that describe the pious people. One of the verses mentioned in Ali Imran, describing the qualities of the muttaqeen. And Allah says, وَالَّذِينَ إِذَا فَعَلُوا فَاحِشَةً أَوْ ظَلَمُوا أَنفُسَهُمْ ذَكَرُوا اللَّهِ. It's very interesting ayah. Because Allah Azza wa Jalla is saying, you're going to fall. You're going to do a sin. But what is Allah saying here? When they end up doing a sin, immediately ذَكَرُوا اللَّهِ. They remember Allah. They remember, oh my God, what did I just do? Allah is watching me. There's good deeds, there's bad deeds, there's a day of judgment. Allah is going to question me. So now all of a sudden you're feeling regretful. Like, why did I do this? You're feeling frightened. What if Allah, takes my soul right now? What if I just ended up doing a sin and I ended up dying on that sin? What's going to happen to me? So you feel scared, you feel frightened, you feel regret. Like, why? You feel upset by yourself. This sense of regret is wallahi a huge blessing. Some people don't even regret their sins. Some people do certain wrongdoings, they use vulgar language, they look at haram things, haram pictures, haram videos, do haram actions, and they normalize it, and they don't even feel a slightest bit of regret, and they justify it. In fact, they say, oh, what's the problem? Everybody's doing it. What's the problem if I cheat? What's the problem if I lie? What's the problem if I backbite? What's the problem if I go get a boyfriend, girlfriend? Everybody's doing it. What's the big deal? That's, where is your humbleness, ya akhi? Where is your level of humbleness? فَاسْتَغْفَرُوا لِذُنُوبِهِمْ. So these are the qualities of the muttaqeen. Those, they remember, yes, they fall into sins, but they regret them. So note that if you have this sense of regret, you should think of Allah for that sense of regret when you fall into a sin. And the faster you return back to Allah, the more that says about who you are and about your level of submission. So submission, khudu', right? This is one of the pillars, essential pillars of worship. Okay? It is one of the major factors that constitutes how heavy is your worship on the scale in the Day of Judgment. Submission is one of them. If I have all of these 4 points that I mentioned right now, then alhamdulillah, I can say that I'm in the green zone, but I should continue to work on myself. However, if I find that I'm lacking in one of these points, well, perhaps now you have a lead. You have something to indicate why you are not feeling it in your salah or in your Quran or whatnot. There is a second factor as well, a second pillar. And both of these pillars are important. You can't just have one or the other. And the second one, and they both kind of complete each other in a sense. The second one is love. Having love towards Allah Azza wa Jal. And I previously mentioned this before. If I were to ask you all the question right now, do you love Allah? I doubt a single person here in the room will say no. Okay? Everybody here will say yes. Some of us, in fact, might feel like offended, like why are you even asking me this question? Do you honestly think that I don't love Allah? How dare you ask me this kind of question? Okay. But talk is easy. Talk is cheap. Everybody can say, I love Allah. Everybody. But actions speak louder than words. So if you want to truly stay true to your words that I love Allah, what are you doing to show that you love Allah? And very simple. As human beings, again, you love your mother. You love your best friend. How do you show them that you appreciate them? How do you show that you love them? Maybe you go to every now and then, you take your mom out for some food, you want to make her happy, you buy her a gift, you say some kind words to her. You do certain actions of service to her. Maybe you're going to one time clean the house or wash the dishes for her without her even asking you, just so that you can put a smile on her face and just so that you can make her happy. This is how you express your love towards your mother or towards anyone for that matter, right? You have to do certain actions. It's not just enough to say, oh, I love you, mom, but I'm not going to help you to do anything. I'm not going to say a kind word to you. I'm not going to give you any gifts. I'm not going to do anything. Okay, what kind of love is this? So, وَلِلَّهِ الْمَثَلُ الْأَعْلَى, but this is in a way the same when it comes to Allah Azza wa Jal. You say that you claim that you love Allah, but you're not praying. You claim that you love Allah, you barely open the Quran. You claim that you love Allah, you only worship Allah in times of ease and then you abandon the worship of Allah in times of difficulties. What kind of love is this? If you want to sincerely show that you love Allah Azza wa Jal, Allah tells us how in the Quran. In Surah Al Imran, Allah Azza wa Jal says, قُلْ إِن كُنْتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهِ. That Allah Azza wa Jal is telling Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, tell them, meaning all of these people around you, if you truly claim that you have sincere love towards Allah Azza wa Jal, فَاتَّبِعُونِي يُحْبِبْكُمُ اللَّهِ. Then follow me, follow my footsteps, follow my sunnah, and Allah shall love you back. So Allah Azza wa Jal here is giving you a clear measurement tool for you to know how much sincere love do you have towards Allah Azza wa Jal. What is that measuring tool? The sunnah of Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. How much of his sunnah are you truly following? In your day-to-day life, do you only stick to the obligations and you abandon the sunnahs? How much do you even know about Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam? How much do you know about his family and his wives? Do you try to apply their teachings in your life? Do you say the same things that they used to say? Do you eat the same way? Do you walk the same way? Do you sleep the same way? How is your life? Out of 100, if you were to grade your own life and to give a grade out of 100, how much out of 100 do you give your life based on how much you follow the sunnah? Based on that answer that only you can answer for yourself, you know how much love do you truly have towards Allah Azza wa Jal. The more you follow the Sunnah and the more you humble yourself towards Allah Azza wa Jal through all of these points, I promise you, you will enjoy worshipping Allah Azza wa Jal. It's not going to become a chore anymore. Some of us might feel like, oh, Salah is like a chore. I have to leave my video games, I have to leave my homework, and I have to go pray Salah. Or, it's taking some money out of my pocket to give it for sadaqah. Oh, I barely have any money. I don't want to give it, right? Sometimes certain acts of worship may feel heavy to us, but I promise you, the more that you work on strengthening these pillars, the more you will enjoy worshipping Allah Azza wa Jalla. Like that, it will literally become to the point, oh, I'm bored, let me go read some Quran. Oh, I'm bored, let me just wake up in the middle of the night and go pray Qiyam al-Layl. It's unthinkable. Some of us right now, we're like, who's crazy enough to want to leave and cut their sleep in the middle of the night so they can wake up? Ask the people who frequent Qiyam al-Layl. Wallah, they'll tell you they are like living in Jannah as they are praying their Qiyam. They're enjoying it. They love it. They love the fact that they leave their sleep. They love the fact that they stand up for long nights and they recite a lot of Quran. They love it. How did they get to that level? It has to do with strengthening these pillars. So all of you here, your homework is not just to go and answer the questions. Your homework is to ask yourself sincerely, how much of these two pillars do I apply in my worship? And if you find yourself that, okay, it's not the way that I should be, then ask yourself, what am I lacking? How can I work to improve it? Nobody can answer that question except you. You know yourself the best. So, how do I now strengthen my pillars? Let's say I understand, okay, I am lacking in some of my pillars. What are some ways that I can use to strengthen? Okay, how can I increase my submission towards Allah Azza wa Jal? How can I increase my love towards Allah Azza wa Jal? We already kind of highlighted some points as I was explaining it, but some other points as well. Mainly just remembering Allah Azza wa Jal, reflecting upon everything that Allah has blessed you with. Wallahi, when you wake up in the morning, especially nowadays in this weather, just before you jump out of your bed, take like 10 seconds. Look around you and try to count the blessings that you are currently in. You wake up in the morning, you open your eyes, you're breathing, you can see the room around you, you have a roof on top of your head, you have a heater when it is like minus 15 outside, you have shelter, you have food, you have water, you have family, you have money, you are in like literally you are swimming in blessings. And this is why Allah Azza wa Jalla says, وَإِن تَعُدُّوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ لَا تُحْصُوهَا. If you were to try to count just one blessing, if you were just to take one blessing out of all these blessings and try to understand and count how significant that is, you would never be able to count it. When you wake up healthy, with food and drink and a roof on top of your head, you have been given, just by these blessings, more than 90% of the people around the world. Just by these blessings. So you need to remember the favors of Allah upon you. The more you remember, the more you remember these things, the more you will appreciate Allah Azza wa Jalla. The more you will love Allah Azza wa Jalla. The more you will say, Alhamdulillah. The more you will realize, okay, whatever problems and issues I'm facing, these are nothing. Allah has given me already so much. What's now, just a little bit of a struggle that I'm struggling with right now, but Allah has given me so much already. So that will grow your love towards Allah. That will make you want to go and worship Allah Azza wa Jalla and do whatever He told you, because thank you Allah for giving me all of these things, right? So realizing Allah's blessings and favors upon you. And similarly, realizing, once again, thinking about your sins and shortcomings. And this is something that you should periodically spend some time to do. Whether once a day or once a week or once a month or whatever, okay? Have a time where you take yourself into account. All of us, we understand, we know there's a day of judgment, and all of us will stand in front of Allah, and Allah will ask all of us what we did. Okay? But before you stand in front of Allah Azza wa Jalla, why don't you stand in front of yourself? Why don't you stand in front of the mirror? Or maybe take a piece of paper and write down and be honest with yourself. What you did good and what you did bad. Why don't you take your own self into question? Why don't you take your own self into account and look at how much shortcomings you have done, how many sins you have done. Look at all maybe perhaps the ibadat that you have missed, or the things that you shouldn't, maybe some of the sunnahs that you wasted, or the time that you wasted. You have to reflect upon about this time, not so that you can beat yourself up and that you can bring yourself down, just so that you can realize that you have so much towards that you need to do towards Allah Azza wa Jal. If Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the Prophet of Allah, and every single day he would make istighfar over 70 or over 100 times, every single night he would stand long night al Qiyamah, he is the Prophet of Allah, then how about average human beings like me and you? Don't we need to do way more? Don't we need to work on ourselves a lot and fix ourselves? So this is one other thing that we should be doing constantly in our lives, as a part of, just like you need to go to a doctor every now and then just to check they check your heartbeats, they check your blood pressure, they sometimes they ask you to do a blood test, right? Just like you do a physical checkup, you also need to do a spiritual checkup for yourself every now and then to see where you stand. And so all of this will result in you in a relationship that is a combination of hope and fear with Allah Azza wa Jal. And that is how the prophets used to worship Allah Azza wa Jal. Allah Azza wa Jal tells us in the Quran, إِنَّهُمْ كَانُوا يُسَارِعُونَ فِي الْخَيْرَاتِ وَيَدْعُونَنَا رَغَبًا وَرَهَبًا. Allah Azza wa Jal is telling us how the prophets used to, if you open Surah Al-Anbiya, it will teach you how the prophets used to worship. Allah concludes it and He says, they used to worship us with hope and with fear. What does it mean, hope and fear? They're hopeful towards Allah's forgiveness. They're hopeful towards Allah's mercy. Okay? But at the same time, they're always worried. Maybe we're not doing enough. And we're not doing enough. Perhaps, how do I know that Allah is accepting my worship even? How do I know, maybe I'm going to commit a sin and I'm going to die upon that sin. So they're hopeful. They know that Allah is Ghafoor and Allah is Ar-Rahman and Al-Ghaffar and Ar-Rahim and all of these names and attributes about Allah that tells us that He is forgiving and merciful. But at the same time, they recognize that, I can't feel safe. I don't know what will happen to me on the Day of Judgment. How do I even know that a single rak'ah that I prayed in my prayer got even accepted? How do I know that a single sajda that I made in my life got accepted? I don't know. So I don't feel safe. I always constantly have the feeling that I need to do more. So this balance of hope and fear is where all of us will find our salvation in. So this is, inshallah, everything that we should know about worshipping Allah Azza wa Jal. Are there any questions about this before I move on to the hadith? No questions? And again, all of these should be pretty straightforward. I think there's nothing, I'm not saying anything new. It's more reminders more than anything, in fact. So next week we will inshallah continue with Tawheed. We mentioned there are 3 categories of Tawheed. We spoke about 2 of them so far, Rububiyyah and Al-Uluhiyyah. There is the third one, Al-Asma' wal-Sifat, and that is what we will start discussing inshallah next week. So jumping right into the hadith inshallah. There's a lot to cover today. عن أنس بن مالك قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. Anas ibn Malik is narrating from Prophet Muhammad صلى الله عليه وسلم. يأتي على الناس زمان الصابر فيهم على دينه كالقابض على الجمر. There shall come a time where the one who is patient upon his religion is the same as someone who is holding with his bare hands a burning coal, a burning ember. Like you know the coal, right? When you go outside to the park and you make a barbecue with coal, that flaming hot coal, holding it with your bare hands. And in another hadith as well, it's a long hadith and the chain is a little bit weaker compared to the first one, but it nevertheless gets the point across. In the long hadith portion of the hadith, Prophet Muhammad says, فَإِنَّ مِنْ وَرَائِكُمْ أَيَّامًا الصَّبْرُ فِيهِنَّ مِثْلُ الْقَبْضِ عَلَى الْجَمْرِ لِلْعَامِلِ فِيهِنَّ مثل القبض على الجمر. That ahead of you are days, meaning towards the end of time, in which patience upon the religion meaning is the same as holding onto a burning coal, like I just said. لِلْعَامِلِ فِيهِنَّ مِثْلُ أَجْرِ 50 رَجُلًا يَعْمَلُونَ مِثْلَ عَمَلِكُمْ. Keep in mind, he's saying this to the Sahaba. And he's saying, at that point in time, the person who is patient upon his religion at that time, the one who does good deeds at that time shall get the reward of 50 of you who does that good deed. 50 of the Sahaba. And so the Sahaba were not fully getting that point and they wanted to clarification. So one of them asked, Ya Rasulullah, أجر 50 رجلا منا أو منهم? Do you mean like the reward of 50 people from us, the Sahaba, or 50 people of them, the people of their time? And so he says, لا بل أجر 50 منكم. So he tells the Sahaba, no, no, I mean 50 of you, meaning the person who does good deed at the end of times and is patient upon his religion, the one good deed will be equal to the person, to 50 amongst you, O Sahaba, who will do that kind of good deed. Now, so before I move on into this, the explanation of the hadith, quickly let's just take someone to share with us their hadith notes or the research. Last week, I think it was you last week, right? Who went last week? Oh, it was you. You went last week. Okay. Okay, we'll take even like this week, and then inshallah next week we'll take other people. I see. Allahumma barik. I should have just taken your explanation and just put it on the slides. Allahumma barik. Jazakumullah khair. That was very amazing. You even gave examples and everything. Allahumma barik. But yes, you hit pretty much on all the points of the hadith. We're going to expand on what some of the points that you said, of course. So, in a way, it's similar to the previous week's hadith where Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is trying to make a point by giving us an example, by giving us an imagery, kind of like a metaphor. Okay? So he's trying to get you to imagine how painful it is to hold a coal. Imagine like when you know, all of us have done this before. Maybe like you have a boiling kettle in your house, or there's a stove, you know, the electric stove that is hot, and then you accidentally touched it. What's your first instinct? Just throw it away. Get out of it, you know, just and yet throw it away. So imagine someone who's holding a burning hot coal in his hand. What do you think the first instinct will be? Throw it away. Throw it away. I don't want to burn my hands. I don't want to harm myself. So the Prophet ﷺ is telling us the difficulty of someone who will hold on to his religion, the difficulty of someone who holds on to his religion towards the end of times is just as difficult as someone who is trying to resist his impulse of throwing away that burning ember, and he's just holding on to it. Subhanallah. Why is this the case? Because at the end of times, and there is no doubt that we are right now around the end of times, and there are still the upcoming times will be even more difficult than today's times, there will be many trials and tribulations, many fitnas. Now, what is a fitna? We're going to talk about that in a second. But there are many things that will happen, many events, many trends that you will live around you that will make you feel like you are out of place. And this is especially true for us who are living here in this part of the world. And as our friend just mentioned, you know, we are just past Christmas season. As Muslims, we've never felt any stranger around Christmas time. Because, of course, in Islam, celebrating Christmas is haram. It's not allowed. Not at school, not in your home, not anywhere. Okay? We previously also with Halloween or with the New Year's or all of these things, Islam has forbidden all of these kinds of celebrations. But when Islam has forbidden these things, how does that make us feel? Let's be honest. Even though, yes, we submit and we say, Sami'na wa ta'ana, we submit to Allah Azza wa Jal, sometimes you wish like, look at these people, they're having fun. Look at them, they're decorating the Christmas tree. They're exchanging gifts. They're having parties in their houses and they're having gifts and sleepovers and this and that. I wish I could do the same things like them. But then you remind yourself, I'm a Muslim, I can't. So you feel like you are out of place. When you are in your classroom and everybody around you is doing these kind of Christmas events and now you're feeling uncomfortable. And you're like, I shouldn't be here. I don't want to be here because this is not my religion. You feel uncomfortable. You feel like you are out of place. When you are at school and you are the only hijabi in your class, or you're the only person who is praying in public, or you are the only person who's taking permission from your teacher to go so that you can catch Dhuhr or Asr prayer at your school, and you feel like you are out of place, like you feel like you're doing something weird or strange, or you feel like people are going to be looking at me funny. Now this definitely is part of what Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is referring to this in this hadith. It's difficult. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is telling us it's difficult as holding to a burning coal. And a person will need a lot of patience if they want to survive the end of times. And if they want to remain steadfast around the end of times. Because once again, it's very tempting. It's very tempting to go out there, especially in public schools, and nowadays even slowly seeping into the Islamic schools as well. You guys see all of these weird trends. In public schools, for example, and you guys already know the situation with all the rainbow flags and whatnot. You guys know, for example, I know in junior high and high school they do it for sure. In your gym class, they have this dance unit. Boys have to dance with girls, and you're graded on it. And these are one out of many, many, many different examples that I can just continue counting on and on and on. And I know how much you guys have struggled. I've gone to schools here as well. I went to public schools as well when I was younger. I went to university here as well. I understand the struggles that you guys go through, and arguably what you guys are going through now is in a way more difficult than some of the things that I went through. But yes, it's difficult. And sometimes you feel awkward. And sometimes you feel tempted that I just want to do the same things that they do. Why? Just so that they can, applaud me, and I can feel like I fit in with them, and they can take me with them, and they can consider me as their friends, and they can hang out with me, and I can do all these fun things with them. But that's not what Allah Azza wa Jal wants. Islam is very clear about what is halal and what is haram. And you need to be patient against these kinds of temptations, against these kinds of desires. And it's difficult. Okay? Nobody is saying, Prophet Muhammad is telling us it is difficult. However, there is another hadith that I shared here up on the slide, which gives us a little bit of a sense of motivation. You see, Islam has always been a strange religion. If you are feeling strange and you're feeling that you're not fitting in with the society that's out there, believe it or not, that's a good sign. Wallahi, that is a good sign. Islam has always been a strange religion. Ever since Islam showed up in Quraysh, more than 1,400 years ago, it didn't fit in. The Quraysh tried to fight it. The Arabs tried to fight it. They tried to reject it. They don't want Islam. They don't want halal and haram. They don't want someone telling them what to do. They don't want someone to tell them just stop doing the same things that you're used to here in society and do what Allah Azza wa Jalla tells you. They don't want that. Humans today, the reason why there's a lot of atheism today and people who tell you I don't believe in God, and the reason why a lot of Christians don't mind staying as Christians is very simple, wallahi. They don't want someone telling them what to do. They don't want someone or a God or a Quran to come and tell them, you have to pray 5 times a day. You have to wear a hijab. You have to fast Ramadan. You have to give zakah. They don't want that. I just want to live my own life. And they will come up with slogans that you guys have heard before. YOLO, you only live once. Live your life the way you want to live it, because you only live once. That's what they will come out and tell you. And someone who tries to hold on to the teachings of Islam is someone who will feel like he is out of place. But Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is giving you the glad tidings. Islam has always been strange since day one, and it shall continue to be strange until the end of time. So, glad tidings to those who feel strange. So rather than feeling awkward, Prophet Muhammad is telling you, rethink how you feel. Rather than you feel like you are out of place and awkward and I'm not fitting in, you should be happy that you are now falling under this glad tidings that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is giving you. That well done. You're feeling strange? Well done. You're feeling strange because you're wearing hijab. You're feeling strange because you're praying in public. You're feeling strange because you are obeying the commands of Allah and sticking to what is halal and avoiding what is haram, regardless of how much peer pressure you are getting from society or how much haram that is out there in social media or all of these celebrations in schools and whatnot, right? You are holding steadfast to your deen, so glad tidings be upon you. And this is why Prophet Muhammad ﷺ told the Sahaba, the action of one of them will be equal to the action of 50 of you. Why? How does that make sense? Very simple. Sahaba lived at a time where Islam was at its glory. Now, of course, Sahaba, nobody can compare with them. We can never ever reach the status of a Sahaba. But especially after the conquest of Mecca and after the Futuhat and after the victory, Islam was at its peak. Everybody around you was Muslim. Like now, it was the other way around. Back in the day, you're weird if you're not Muslim. Something's not right if you are not Muslim. Everybody, left and right, up and down, they are converting. Everybody's converting to Islam. So there are so many Muslims around them to remind them of Allah Azza wa Jal, to tell them they should fear Allah, that they should pray their prayers and do their adhkar. There are a lot of pious people around them. Today, it's the other way around. You don't have a lot of pious people. A person is trying so hard to be pious and he is resisting all of these shayateen who are there around them. The human shayateen who are telling them, don't pray. Who are telling them, come and hang out with us and party, even if you're going to miss your prayer. Don't listen to your parents. It's okay if you cheat on the exam. It's okay if you celebrate Christmas. What's the big deal? What's the harm? It's okay to have a boyfriend, girlfriend. What's the harm, ya akhi? You're not going to do any haram. You're going to stick to the boundaries. You have so much whisperings and temptations from the shaitan himself and from humans around you as well. And so how much more difficult, it's several times more difficult for a pious believer to remain pious in these kinds of, in this kind of times. And even one of the famous poems that is known to us, by Al-Imam Al-Shatibi. He says one of the lines in his poem. He says, وَهَذَا زَمَانُ الصَّبْرِ مَنْ لَكَ بِالَّتِي كَقَبْضِ عَلَى جَمْرٍ فَتَنْجُ مِنَ الْبَرَى. That it's interesting. Why am I mentioning this? Because Imam Al-Shatibi is writing in his poem that my time is this time, is the time of patience. Is like this person who's holding an ember. When did Imam Al-Shatibi live? Almost a little more than 900 years ago. And he thought that his time had it difficult. He thought that his time had it tough. May Allah have mercy on you, Mr. Imam Shatibi. But if only we lived in 2024, you would see how much patience we needed to have to survive for a Muslim and a believer to hold on to his iman in 2024. And of course, now one person might ask, why does Allah Azza wa Jal allow for these tests to happen, for these trials and tribulations? Why does Allah Azza wa Jal allow for these difficulties to happen, or for these trends to happen in public school, or for all of this thing to happen? Why does Allah Azza wa Jal allow it if it's not good for me, and if it's not good for the believer? Very simple. Allah Azza wa Jal says in the Quran, Alif Lam Mim, أحسب الناس أن يتركوا أن يقولوا آمنا وهم لا يفتنون. Do people think, do the believers in Allah, He's talking to you, do the believers in Allah think that they will be just left to say that I believe in Allah without Allah putting them under the test? Allah says, we tested those who came before you. What makes you think that you're going to be any different? You see, Islam is not just about saying La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, khalas, that's it. It's about holding on to La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. And there's a big difference. It's easy to utter it, but it's not as easy to live by it and to hold on to it. So this is what a fitna does, a trial and a tribulation. Allah allows for this trend to happen. Yes, it is harmful, but why? So He can test His believers. Who will be patient? Who will hold on steadfast? And who will go astray? Who will start to disobey? Who will start to compromise in their religion? Just start to do something that is, allow themselves to fall into some things that they are haram. Right? This is how Allah grades the believers. Why do you think there are several different levels for Jannah? Why do you think there is al-firdaus, who is at the peak Jannah? And why is there a minimum Jannah? How is Allah Azza wa Jalla going to distinguish the good believer from the bad believer? It is through these kind of trials. It is through these kinds of events, or through these kinds of things that happen to us in the world. When they happen, Allah Azza wa Jalla, it's just like a school. Just like a school. How is your teacher, how is your teacher going to know who is the good student from the bad student? Who is the student who is studying and who is the student who is not paying attention? Who is the student who is attending all the classes and who is the student who neglects all his homework? Very simple, by giving them exams. And based on how you do on that exam, okay, either you're going to pass the course, you're going to fail the course, you're going to pass, but you're going to get a C+, or you're going to pass, you're going to get an A+. And if you get an A+, you're going to get a special prize, or you're going to get a special honor or a special medal. But if you get a C+, you passed the course, but you didn't do as well as you should be doing. Or if you failed the course, well, too bad. You didn't do what you were supposed to do. This is exactly, in a way, what Allah Azza wa Jalla is doing to us. This life is a test for me and you. How does the exam come to us in this life? It's not gonna come in the pen and a paper that comes with wings falling from the sky and tells you to answer questions. No, it's gonna come with situations that you will face in your life. It will come in the form of Christmas at school. It will come in the form of celebrating New Year's. It will come in the form of Valentine's Day and Halloween Day and birthdays and this day and that day, or in the form of rainbow flags, or in the form of dancing with the opposite gender at school. This is how the test comes to the Muslim. In certain things where you feel tempted that I want to do it, but at that point in time you need to realize and you need to remind yourself, who am I worshipping right now? Who is my God? Is my God Allah, or is my God my desire? Is my God Christmas? Is my God Santa Claus? Who is my God? I need to remind myself, who am I worshipping? And I need to remind myself of my purpose, my true purpose here in this world. And I'm going to leave these kind of celebrations and these kind of trends for the sake of Allah, such that Allah Azza wa Jalla might reward me with something which is better on the Day of Judgment, and Allah shall reward these people with something that is much better. What can compare with an eternal Jannah? A Jannah where no matter how much you try to imagine how beautiful it is, you will never be able to imagine. Whatever your mind thinks right now about Jannah, that is not Jannah. You will never ever be able to imagine how beautiful Jannah is. You will never ever be able to imagine the colors, the food, the enjoyment that you will get in Jannah. The reward, you will never, the only thing we know about Jannah is that it is called Jannah. That is the only thing we know about Jannah. Can you imagine? Are you really going to trade that off for something so insignificant, just so that you can have fun with your friends and go on Secret Santa and go and do the certain the dance unit, or this kind of, or a certain activity that you know is haram, but you're just going to do it anyways, or you're going to miss your prayers? Is it really worth it? Are you really going to trade off an infinite reward for something that is not even worth $1? It's up to you. But the Prophet ﷺ is telling us it's difficult, but if you remain steadfast, there is the reward. And the more the difficulty that you face, the harder the test is, obviously, the more the reward you should expect from Allah Azza wa Jal. So, moving on, just so that we don't take the full time. How can I remain steadfast in such a difficult time? Today, our times are, we can say, pretty challenging. And it shall continue to get even more challenging as we grow up. This is just the way life is going to go. So how can I remain steadfast? Well, first and foremost, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ showed you how to live your life and how to get to Jannah. There's a reason why Prophet Muhammad ﷺ existed, why Allah Azza wa Jalla sent him. He is your roadmap. He is your cheat sheet. You know what a cheat sheet is? He is your answer key. Okay? Imagine if your teacher gave you the exam and then the teacher gave you the answer key. Do you think anyone would fail the exam? If the teacher gives you an exam, a paper exam, and then after he gives you the exam sheet, he gives you the answer sheet, do you think anyone will fail the exam? No. Except for someone who closes their eyes and decides to throw the answer sheet away. What kind of person would throw away the answer sheet after the teacher willingly gave it to him. Right? Now, of course, that never happens at school. But fortunately for us, it happens in life. Allah Azza wa Jal, yes, He's going to put you through questions and through trials and tribulations, and He's going to give you certain exams in your life. But Allah gave you the answer key as well. What is the answer key? Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Whenever you find yourself in a difficult or a tricky situation, your go-to is Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What did Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam do in my situation? What hadith talk about my situation? What verses of the Quran talk about my situation? What does Islam say? How should I react in this situation such that so that I am continuing to obey Allah Azza wa Jal and following the footsteps of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? If you do this with every single situation in your life, you will never ever go astray. Allah Azza wa Jal shall never let the person who is holding so tightly to the Sunnah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to go astray. Of the things that we should be careful about is staying away, honestly, from the trends. You see, the general way that this life goes, whenever the majority of people are doing something, that's usually a red flag. When everybody is starting to do something, that's usually a red flag. You should be careful of following the majority of the people. Why? Because Allah says in the Quran, وَإِن تُطِعْ أَكْثَرَ مَنْ فِي الْأَرْضِ يُضِلُّكَ عَنْ سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. If you follow the majority of mankind, they're going to lead you astray. So as soon as you see everybody around you or the majority of people around you taking one direction, taking a certain path, that's your red flag. Be careful, boys and girls. Be careful of taking that direction, because chances are that's going to be a harmful trend. There's going to be some sort of haram in it, something that is not allowed, something that goes against what we believe about in Islam. And usually that comes in the form of celebrities or evil role models, popular YouTube channels, singers, musicians, actors, gamers. They do certain actions, or they promote certain agendas, or they encourage you to live your life in a certain kind of way, even like sports players, football players, basketball players, all of these things. You have to be careful whom you are looking up to and whom you are following, because more often than usual, those people will end up taking you on the wrong path. And you need to be careful. That's your red flag over there. You already have a path you should be following. You don't need anyone else's path. Even if you're going to feel weird, even if you're going to feel strange, even if you're not going to feel like you're fitting, and even if you are getting peer pressured by your friends. Is my friend going to take me to Jannah and Jahannam? Is my friend going to be the one who takes me to Jannah and Jahannam? Honestly, to hell with my friend. If my friend wants to do something haram, if my friend wants to attend these parties which I shouldn't be attending, or doing these things that I shouldn't be doing, they can go and, you know what, good for you, and too bad. Too bad, may Allah guide you. But I'm not going to follow the same things you are. If my friend is going to jump out of the window, I'm not going to jump out the window with him. If my friend is going to throw himself off a cliff, I'm not going to throw myself off a cliff with my friend. If my friend is going to throw himself into an eternal hellfire, I'm surely not going to follow my friend and jump into an eternal hellfire. So you got to be careful, boys and girls, whom you are following, whom you are listening to, whether that be your friend, whether that be someone who's a celebrity, someone who is popular. You need to be very careful. Following desires, following evil role models, and even falling into innovations, even if you get peer pressured into them, or even if the majority of people end up doing them. And last and most importantly, the book of Allah Azza wa Jal. The book of Allah is your guide to Jannah. The book of Allah is your Google Maps that will take you from this dunya to the doors of Jannah. The Quran is your guide. This world is darkness. Quran is your light. Quran is your lantern. It will light up the path in front of you. It will light up the correct path for you, and you will walk on it, and it will take you to Jannah. Quran shall argue for your sake on the day of judgment, when you really need someone to argue for your sake. If you had a close relationship with your Quran, never let the book of Allah go. If you are someone who does not currently have a close relationship with the Quran, you still have time. The Quran is not something that only gets opened in Ramadan. The Quran is not something that only gets open in Mondays and Thursdays or in any Quran school that I go to. The Quran is something that I take with me wherever I go. Day by day, I open it, I read it, and I reflect over its meanings. Quran is not only for memorizing and reading. It's good, of course. If you memorize Quran, alhamdulillah, that's very rewarding. You get a lot of blessings. If you read the Quran, you get a lot of hasanat. But the Quran is not just a literature book. It's not just a book that is made for reading, and that's it. It's a book of reflection. لِيَدَّبَّرُوا آيَاتِهِ, so that you can ponder over the meanings, so that you can see the message of the Quran. You can remind yourself that La ilaha illallah, you get reminded of the Jannah, you get reminded of Jahannam, you get reminded of the difficulties that the prophets went through. So that shall be your guide to Jannah. The Quran, the book of Allah. So hold on steadfast to the book of Allah, to the Sunnah of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and be careful of following the majority. I took a little bit too much time. I have to move on. So this is the hadith that we'll discuss inshallah next week. Any questions before I move on? Yes. Yeah, you can do it online. That's fine. If you do online Quran, that's beautiful. No problem. Any other questions? Everything is clear? Or are you guys just all asleep? Yes? No? No answer? Okay, you have a question? Okay, we're not talking about that right now, right? Anyways, okay, let's just move on. So, what is the difference between universal worship and religious worship? Yes, Muhammad. Jazakallah khair. Universal worship, the entire creation does it, whether they like it or not. As for the religious worship, is only for the Muslims. They willingly, by choice, they choose to worship Allah Azza wa Jal. How can a Muslim grow in humbleness and submission towards Allah Azza wa Jal? We mentioned the pillars, right? The submission, the love. How can I grow in my submission? It's not a trick question, please. Yes. Very good. Jazakumullah khairan. So we mentioned remembering that you are in need of Allah at all times, 24/7. You are not capable of living a single half second without Allah Azza wa Jal. Remembering having love for Allah Azza wa Jal, following the commands of Allah Azza wa Jal, and feeling regret over your own sins. What is the greatest sign which shows that a person sincerely loves Allah Azza wa Jal? Yes? Yep. We mentioned in the Quran, there's something very specific that tells us if a person is truly sincerely following Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yes, in the front. Following Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, following the Sunnah. Okay. So the more a person follows the Sunnah, that's their biggest proof that they actually love Allah Azza wa Jalla. How can a person strengthen their love and their submission towards Allah Azza wa Jalla? It's kind of similar to the previous question, but none of the girls want to answer, and it's just always one person answering. You guys don't know how you should grow your love and submission towards Allah? Huh? Yes, in the back? Actions are louder than words. Very good. So we mentioned doing the actions that please Allah Azza wa Jal, remembering Allah Azza wa Jal's favors upon us, right? Feeling regret over our own shortcomings and sins, and worshiping Allah through hope and fear, and having a balance between the two. What did Prophet Muhammad ﷺ mean when he said holding onto a burning ember or a burning coal? Yes, Muhammad. No, you.
Like the burning coal or ember is like our religion, and that we just want to kill it, we just want to follow our religion, and we don't want to.
Very good. So we can The difficulty, imagine how hard it is to hold on a burning coal. That's how hard it will be to hold on and to stay steadfast upon your religion towards the end of times. What is the purpose of trials and tribulations? Girls, I want to see some more participation. Yes. Uh-huh. Very good. So that Allah Azza wa Jalla can test His servants to see who is actually going to be pious and good and patient, and who will start to disobey and to start following his own desires and to just start giving up their own religion. Why did Prophet Muhammad say that the reward of the patience at the end of times is equal to the reward of 50 men amongst you, meaning the Sahaba? Safe. Very good. So in the future, you're not going to have that many believers, pious believers around you. Versus in the past, there were a lot of pious believers, okay? So they can remind one another. Today, we live in a time where pious believers are very rare. And they will feel strange, right? Like strangers. How can a person remain steadfast as they are facing trials and tribulations? How can you remain steadfast? Girls, seriously, just one person answering all the questions. Allah Mubarak. He's going to hug all the candy and all the chocolate we have. Yes. And the Sunnah, right? So holding on tightly to the Quran, the Book of Allah, the Sunnah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, always going back to the Sunnah. Whenever you are facing a hard situation, say, what did Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam do, or what did the Sahaba do, right? What does the Quran say about it? And then putting a big red flag when you see the majority of people doing something, because that's usually an indication they're not doing something right. Whenever the majority of people do something, that's usually an indication they are not doing something right. Okay, moving on. This is going to be the bulk over here. So you're going to have to pay attention. This is very meaty now. We're getting into the fiqh of salah. And fiqh of salah needs a lot of focus. Otherwise, you're going to lose track and you're going to be confused. What are we talking about? Last week, we talked about the shurut of the salah, the conditions of prayer. Okay, remember, we mentioned like intention, facing the qibla, entering the time, having wudu, so on and so forth. We mentioned like 9 different conditions, right? So make sure you review them if you don't have them memorized already. Before we move forward about some of the pillars of prayer, there's one more thing we need to talk about, and that is when it comes to praying in a vehicle. Okay, so let's say I am traveling somewhere, whether I'm in a car or in a bus or I'm in a ship or I'm in an airplane, wherever I am, and I need to pray. What is the ruling for prayer for someone who is traveling through one of these vehicles? It depends on the type of prayer. If it is a optional prayer or like a sunnah prayer, voluntary prayer, it has its own rulings. If it's a fard, obligatory prayer, it has other rulings as well. If the prayer that I want to pray is a optional prayer, a voluntary prayer, so let's say duha prayer, for example, or the sunnah prayers, or qiyamul layl, for example, then we are actually told through one of the hadith that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu as he was on his camel, even though his camel is not even walking towards the qibla, he would pray his nafil prayer as he is sitting on the camel and as his camel is walking. Meaning he does not get off his camel and he does not face the qibla either. He just prays on his camel, but this is only the optional prayer, the sunnah prayer, the nafil prayer. And he would also perform his witr prayer on the camel. So from this we learn that if it is a sunnah prayer, a voluntary prayer, whether you are on an airplane, a car, or a bus, or train, or whatever, you don't need to necessarily face the qibla or to stand up. Okay? So you can do it while you are sitting down and while the car or the bus or whatever is facing wherever it is facing. However, the scholars add that it is more rewarding for you to stand up and to face the qibla if you are able to. but it is not mandatory. Meaning, yani if I'm in a car and I'm able to stop the car and face the qibla and stand up and pray the full prayer as I am, the way I normally do, standing up and things. This shall be more rewarding for the person who does that. And plus, there is a different hadith that tells us that whoever, speaking about the person who is able to pray while he is standing, but he chooses to sit down. The Prophet ﷺ tells us that whoever prays standing, that is better for him. Whoever prays sitting, then he gets half the reward. Okay? So this is another encouragement for you that you should be, as much as possible, try your best to be able to face the Qibla and to pray while you are standing up so that you get the full reward of the prayer. You don't only get half the reward. But again, bear in mind, okay, this is very important. This is for the sunnah prayers. Don't get confused. This is why I'm saying pay close attention, otherwise you're going to start messing everything up. Okay? This is only for the voluntary prayers. Clear? What if now it has to do with an obligatory prayer and I am traveling? I'm in the car, I'm stuck in traffic, I'm in the car, I need to pray, or I'm traveling somewhere on the airplane, or I'm on a train, or whatever, okay? And I need to pray my fard prayer. Here, scholars note, they say you need to look a little bit more closely because this is an obligatory prayer now. And they tell us, if you are able to catch the prayer after your trip is over, meaning the time will not be up, then you should delay the prayer. Meaning, let's say I'm on my way back from school, you're taking the school bus, or you're in the car back from work, and you're on the way home, you haven't prayed Asr yet, and you know that if I delay the Salah, I'll get home and I'll have, 20 minutes to pray my Asr prayer. Then the scholars tell us, wait till you get home. Why? So that you can stand up and you can face the Qibla. And you pray properly the way that you should be praying. Okay? If a person is worried that he will not catch the prayer, or he knows that he won't be able to catch the prayer by delaying it, then he should pray as he is. Okay? He should pray as he is. And actually I forgot, I didn't mention the first point. If a person can stop the vehicle, okay, so if you are driving in your own car, okay, and you know, for example, that you can park your car on the side, or maybe your dad is driving the car, and you can ask your dad to park the car on the side, and he is able to do so, you must do so. You must do so. Okay? You don't have a choice. Girls, if you don't want to listen, please leave the room. Okay? This is important. I want people to pay attention. Girls in the middle. Okay? So, if you are able to stop the car and pray outside without delaying the prayer. Take out the prayer mat or something, face the Qibla, stand up while you are praying. Make sense? If you are unable to stop the car, and obviously, for example, in the airplane, you're not going to get tell the pilot, hey, land the plane, bro. I need to, stand up. It doesn't work that way. Or in a train, or maybe you're traveling through a bus. The bus driver is not going to listen to you. Okay? So in these cases, if you are able to catch the prayer by delaying it to the end and catching it before the time of the next prayer comes in, then you should delay it. If you are unable to do either, meaning you're unable to stop the vehicle, and I am unable to delay the prayer because I'm going to miss it, then I should pray as I am right now. And the expectation is, this is important, if I am able to stand up, I have to stand up. This is not a choice. And if I am able to face the Qibla, I have to face the Qibla. I don't have a choice. Okay? So if I am, so for example, some airlines, for example, I took the Saudi Airlines just less than a year ago, and the Saudi Airlines actually nowadays they did something where they have a prayer room in the back, and you can actually stand up in the airplane, and I can face the Qibla and everything. So if that is available for me in the airplane where I can stand up and I can face the Qibla and I can do my whole prayer while standing up, I must do so. I do not have an excuse to sit down. That does not give me the excuse to sit down in my seat. My prayer will not be accepted. Because a requirement for Salah is for me to stand up and to face the Qibla. I have to do this. However, if I am unable to do that, maybe the airplane is really tight, or I am in a car and I cannot stop the car or the bus, and it's a really tight place, and then I at least try to face the Qibla with my body if I'm able to. Okay, like if the bus is driving this way and the Qibla is this way, that perhaps I can rotate a little bit my body towards the Qibla, so at least I can face the Qibla. So at least I face the Qibla even if I cannot stand up. But the point here is I have to do everything I can to see if I can stand up or if I can face the Qibla. Okay? If I am unable to stand up and I'm unable to face the Qibla, then it is what it is. Allah Azza wa Jalla says in the Quran, فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ مَا اسْتَطَعْتُمْ, that you fear Allah as much as you can, you're mindful of Allah as much as possible. So you do whatever you can and you just pray how you are. You can pray at that moment only, you can pray while you are sitting down. You do your ruku' and your sujood by leaning. You've seen people praying while they're sitting down. They just lean forward for ruku' and sujood and whatnot, right? So this is for the person who is traveling in a car or a bus, or any kind of transportation. But the point is, you do not have an excuse, and especially for you boys and girls who go to schools, and a lot of us, unfortunately, we're missing our prayers left and right in our schools, and you're using your school as an excuse. I'm telling you right now, your school is not an excuse for you to miss your prayers. Do whatever you need to do. You have to catch your prayers, no matter where you are, no matter what you are doing. Okay? Very quick question. Yes. Yeah.
What if there's only 10 minutes left to pray and let's say about
And that's so now. See, now this is a different issue, right? Because now the airline, they have the seatbelt sign on. They're telling you the what's it called, the attendants. They're not allowing anybody to stand up, right? They're telling you there's a turbulence. There's the plane is taking off, it's landing, whatever. You have to pray in your seat, right? Especially if you can't, like, if you're about to miss the prayer. If you can wait for a little bit and then the timer will go off and then you can go pray, then you should wait a little bit. Make sense? Okay, moving on. I don't want to take questions right now because there's still a lot to cover. So before I move on, I want to clarify certain terminology that I will be using from now on. Okay, boys in the back again. If you do not want to listen, please leave the room. I want everybody to focus because this is very, very important. This has to do with your salah. If you want to talk and play around and giggle and joke around, please just leave the room. Okay, just out of the sake of respect for those who are around you. Okay, so last week we covered the shurut of the salah, conditions of the prayer. We mentioned that these are conditions that have to be met before I can even start my prayer, and I have to maintain throughout my prayer. Meaning, like, for example, it's a condition that I need to have purity. I need to have tahara, wudu. Okay? I need to have wudu before I even start my prayer, and I need to maintain my wudu within my prayer as well. If I break my wudu, khalas, my prayer is done, it's gone. Okay? These are conditions of prayer. And we covered these last week. You can go and review you can go to the previous video and you can review that. Today we're going to talk about arkanus salah. Okay? There is something called the pillars of prayer. Certain actions in my salah are called pillars of prayer. Why are they called pillars, the arkan of the salah? Because without them, my salah is not valid. Whether I miss them by accident. If you miss them deliberately, khalas, your salah is over. Okay? If you deliberately miss any of these pillars, then your salah is broken. Khalas, your salah is invalid. If you accidentally, this is the main difference here, okay? Pay attention to this point. If you accidentally miss one of these pillars, your salah is invalid until you go back and make up one of these pillars. Make up the pillar that you missed. Now, how does that look like? How do I make it up? We're going to discuss that in a lot of details, inshallah, in the next couple of weeks or so. Why am I saying this is important? Because there's now something else that we will discuss in the future called the obligations of salah. Okay? Boys and girls, again, pay attention. Wajibat of the salah, obligations. What's the difference between obligation and a pillar of salah? Very simple. Both of them, if I deliberately miss them, my salah is invalid. If I miss a pillar, my salah is invalid. If I miss an obligation purposely, my salah is invalid. However, if I accidentally miss a pillar, I have to make it up. If I accidentally miss a obligation, I don't have to make it up. I can simply make sujood at the end of my salah. and my salah is completely valid. This is the main difference. I need you guys to understand this. The pillar, if I miss it, even by accident, I have to go back to what I just forgot, and I have to make it up again. I can't just go by and be like, khalas, I'll just do sujood at the end of the salah. Whereas a wajib, an obligation, if I missed it accidentally, I don't have to go back. I just continue my prayer and I perform sujood towards the end of my salah. Is that clear? Clear? Okay, so that's the pillars, that's the wajib, and sorry, the pillars and the obligations, so the rukn and the wajib. And then we will discuss the sunan of the salah. Okay, the sunnah. And sunnah is just a sunnah. Means whether you do it or if you do it, you get rewarded for it. But if you don't do it, your salah is still valid. So the salah is split into these 4 different categories. We already discussed the first one. We covered it. Okay. So today we're going to discuss the pillars of prayer. Okay. And we all should know by now and understand what is a pillar, a rukn of salah. So what are the arkan of salah? And before I jump into this, I just need to quickly clarify. There are certain differences of opinions in some of these arkan. Okay. So perhaps, and again, I've mentioned this so many times before, but just so that you know, I am, disclaimer. Okay. If you have taken a fiqh class in the past, you've learned it with a sheikh, or you've taken a different fiqh class other than this one, and you learned something maybe slightly different than what I'm teaching you, it's fine. Okay, it doesn't mean that what you learned was wrong or that what I'm teaching you is wrong. Okay, there is differences of opinions, so you can stick to whatever you know if that's what you want to do. Okay, there's no problem. But what I am gonna give you over here are the safest options according to all the scholars. These are the safest actions that you can do in your salah. If you do them, then your salah, according to all the scholars in the world, is a correct salah. Okay? So just bear that disclaimer in your mind, just so that I avoid getting myself into any kind of trouble. The first rukn of salah is to stand up. Meaning, if you have the ability to stand up, you have to stand up. Okay? You can't be like, oh, I'm tired, or I'm feeling this kind of way, I don't want to stand up. You have to stand up unless you have a genuine excuse not to stand up. Meaning, for example, sometimes you might have an elderly person, or someone on a wheelchair, or someone broke his leg, okay, and they physically cannot stand up. The doctor told them, don't stand up, you should be sitting down. Okay? These people, they have the license to sit down until they are able to stand up again. Okay? And even if they are not able to sit down, they can lay down on their sides. And if they are not able to lay down on their sides, they can lay down flat on their back. But the point is, they have to do something. But the expectation is that you are standing up. Okay? Allah Azza wa Jalla says, حافظوا على الصلوات والصلاة الوسطى وقوموا لله قانتين. Stand up in true devotion to Allah Azza wa Jalla. And we already explained, of course, for a nafil prayer, a sunnah prayer, it is allowed to sit down. Okay? This is why I said you gotta be focusing, you gotta be taking down notes, otherwise you're gonna be lost. Okay? In a sunnah, in a nafil prayer, yes, it's allowed to sit down. Regardless, you're traveling, you're at home, you're in the masjid, whatever, you are allowed to sit down. It's more rewarding to stand up. For fard, absolutely not, you have to stand up. Clear? So this is the first rukn, that is standing up. The second rukn, takbiratul ihram. The first takbirah that the imam says, or like you say in your salah, Allahu Akbar, this is called takbiratul ihram. This is the takbirah that opens the prayer. There is no prayer for someone who does not do takbiratul ihram. Okay? Because Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he tells, so there is now there's a hadith that it is the primary reference for us in terms of the arkan and the wajibat of the salah and all this. Not. It is called al hadith al musi'u li salatih. There is a person who lived at the time of the Sahaba who prayed badly in front of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the summary of the hadith is like, he would pray, and then Prophet Muhammad would tell him, go back and repeat your prayer because you did not pray. The man would repeat his prayer. Prophet after he's done, he told him, you did not pray, your prayer is invalid, repeat your prayer. And he did it 3 times until the man said, Ya Rasulullah, teach me how to pray, I don't know how to pray. And so because of this guy who messed up his prayer several times, Prophet Muhammad told us step by step how we should pray. And so he tells us, إذا قمت إلى الصلاة فأسبغ الوضوء ثم استقبل القبلة فكبر. So when you want to get up and pray, you make your wudu, you stand up, you face the qibla, then you do takbir. Allahu Akbar. Okay? That is a rukn of salah. If you did not make it, and you can't just stand in line and just say, and join the prayer with the imam, for example. You didn't even start your prayer. I can't just stand like this and stay and start Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. I didn't even start my prayer. Okay? So there is no prayer for someone who does not do the takbir. Now the rukn here, and again, this is where now we're getting into the nitty-bitty details. Okay? The takbir is saying it verbally. Raising your hand is a sunnah. Okay? Saying the takbir verbally is the rukn here. You have to say Allahu Akbar. But let's say for whatever reason you forgot to raise your hands like this. You didn't do Allahu Akbar like this. You didn't raise your hand. Your salah is still valid. But it's a sunnah. Prophet Muhammad always used to raise his hand whenever he would say Allahu Akbar. Okay? Just so that we can clarify this. And another rukn of prayer, the third one now, reciting Surah Al-Fatiha in every single rak'ah of your prayer. You have to recite Surah Al-Fatiha. This is one of the points where the scholars get into a small difference. The majority of the scholars say it is a rukn. You have to do it. Because Prophet Muhammad said, لا صلاة لمن لم يقرأ بفاتحة الكتاب. There is no prayer for someone who does not recite, who does not start with the opening of the book, meaning the opening of the book is Al-Fatiha. Okay? So you have to recite Surah Al-Fatiha. Whether you are standing, whether you are praying alone or whether you are praying in a jama'ah, you have to recite Surah Al-Fatiha. Now, just a side point. When it comes to praying in a jama'ah behind an imam, okay, there is an issue of dispute here. Do I recite Surah Al-Fatiha behind the imam or not? And there's now differences of scholars. The most correct opinion out of all the scholars, the majority of scholars, they agree on this opinion. If the imam, careful here, pay attention. If it is a silent prayer, meaning like Dhuhr and Asr, okay, these are silent prayers, or it is one of the silent rak'at, so like the third or the fourth rak'ah, you guys know what I'm talking about. If it's a silent prayer or it's a silent rak'ah, you have to read Surah Al-Fatiha. You have to read Surah Al-Fatiha. Okay? However, if it is a loud prayer, like Fajr, Maghrib, Isha, or in one of the first two rak'ahs, where the Imam is reciting loudly, then you do not recite Surah Al-Fatiha. You listen to Surah Al-Fatiha that the Imam is reciting. So for example, in like 20 more minutes or so, we're going to go and stand up behind the Imam, and we're going to pray Maghrib prayer. When the Imam begins his prayer and he starts to say, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, I don't recite Surah Al-Fatiha after him. That according to the most correct opinion, okay? If the Imam, the recitation of the Imam of Surah Al-Fatiha is, he is khalas, taken that, he took that job for me. He did the job for me. Make sense? But like in the Maghrib prayer, which we're going to pray, the third rak'ah, the silent rak'ah, I have to recite Surah Al-Fatiha. Does that make sense? Okay? So the third pillar is Surah Al-Fatiha. Ruku', bowing down for ruku'. Because Allah Azza wa Jal says in the Quran, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu ka'u wasjudu. Irka'u wasjudu. O believers, do ruku'. So you have to bow down. And because the Prophet ﷺ also told the man who was doing his prayer badly as he was teaching him, he told him, ثُمَّ ارْكَعْ حَتَّى تَطْمَئِنَّ رَاكِعًا. After you finish reciting, the Quran, what you need to recite, bow down in ruku'. And this is the key point here, boys and girls. I want you to pay attention to this because I see a lot of mistakes in this one. Until you feel at rest when you bow down. Meaning, you bow down and then you pause for a little bit. Unfortunately, a lot of us who are praying in a rush, I see you, mashallah, you're trying to break a new world record with the ruku' and your sujood, okay? That will invalidate your salah. You did not do ruku', or you did not pause in your ruku'. That is one of the pillars. We're going to talk about that. You have to pause. Give some time for yourself to say Subhana Rabbi al-Azim, Subhana Rabbi al-Azim, Subhana Rabbi al-Azim. Give yourself a few seconds, just bow down like this picture, okay? So you stay like that and you pause for briefly before you come back up again, okay? If you are not pausing, you are invalidating your prayer. Be careful of this. Okay? And then after ruku', rising up from the ruku' until a person stands straight. Because Prophet ﷺ tells the same person, ثُمَّ ارْفَعْ رَأْسَكَ حَتَّى تَعْتَدِلَ قَائِمًا. Then raise your head, meaning after you bow down, until you are standing straight. And again, the key point here, standing straight. Some people who rush, they just come back and they barely get up from their ruku' and they just go back to sujood. If you did not stand up straight, you missed this pillar. You did not fulfill this pillar, your prayer is invalid. Okay? So pay attention to this point, boys and girls, okay? And then also of the arkan of as-salah is going down to sujood, prostrating. Because Prophet Muhammad tells the same man again, ثُمَّ اسْجُدْ حَتَّى تَطْمَئِنَّ سَاجِدًا. Then prostrate, go down for sujood until you, once again, you feel like you are at rest. So just like you would pause for your ruku', you have to pause for your sujood. You have to make sure your sujood is proper. In a different hadith, Prophet Muhammad tells us, your sujood, there have to be seven bones. Boys, pay attention to this. 7 bones that have to be touching the floor in your sujood. And if they are not touching, then according to some scholars, your prayer is invalid. Your forehead has to touch. Okay, boys and girls, when you are at sujood, because again, I see lots of mistakes in this. Your forehead has to touch the floor. Your nose has to touch the floor. Okay, your forehead, your nose. You can't raise your head and not touch your nose. According to some scholars, your prayer is invalid if you do that. Both hands like this. Okay, put your fingers together like this and put them down. Both hands should be touching the floor. Both knees should be touching the floor, and my toes should be touching. Sometimes I see people, their feet are flying up in the air as they are doing sujood. According to some scholars, this invalidates your salah. Your toes should be touching the floor as you are praying. Otherwise, you're in trouble. So you go down to sujood, you make sure that these 7 body parts are touching the floor, and you pause. Give yourself some time to do adhkar. Subhana Rabbi al-A'la, Subhana Rabbi al-A'la, Subhana Rabbi al-A'la. You know, just don't, if you are going down to sujood and getting up back immediately without even resting, you did not do sujood, your salah is invalid. Okay? Very, very important. Sitting between the 2 prostrations as well. Okay? After the first sajda, you get back and you sit down. Okay? Because Prophet Muhammad tells him, ثُمَّ ارْفَعْ حَتَّى تَسْتَوِيَ وَتَطْمَئِنَّ جَالِسًا. Sit up now from your sujood until you are at rest while you are sitting down. So once again, some people, I see them, they do sujood, they get back up and they immediately go back up. They immediately go back down for the second sajda. This is incorrect. This shall invalidate your salah. You need to pause in between the 2 sujood. Say adhkar, say Rabbi ghfirli, Rabbi ghfirli. Okay? And there's other adhkar you can also do. But the point is, you have to sit and you have to go still. You have to pause. You're with me, boys and girls? With me? Yes? Okay. The 8th rukn, and we've been mentioning that a lot, pausing between each part of the prayer. Okay? Because he told the man at each step until you feel at rest. So you have to pause in each prayer part. Okay? So all your bones and all your muscles and all your limbs in your body should be at rest at this point. Khalas. Whether you are standing up or you're going down for ruku' or at sujood, or whether you are sitting, you have to give your time to rest. And if you are not doing that, you are missing this pillar and you are invalidating your salah. The final tashahhud is a rukn according to some of the scholars. The safest opinion is to count it as a rukn. Again, it has differences, but we'll just count it as a rukn. Sitting for the final tashahhud. What do I mean by tashahhud? Tashahhud is what I say at the end, as I am sitting down after the 2 rak'ahs or after the final rak'ah, which is to say, التحيات لله والصلوات والطيبات السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. This is what we call التشهد. Okay? And there are slight versions of the tashahhud that we found in different hadith, and whatever version you have memorized. So some people say Assalamu alayka ayyuhan nabi, some say Assalamu ala nabi, some say Attahiyatu طيبات الزكيات, right? So they add another word. Whatever you do, as long as you are doing some sort of tashahhud in one of the accepted phrases, then you're meeting this pillar. But you cannot skip this, according to one group of scholars, and this is the safest opinion, is that you should do it. And similarly, in the final tashahhud, you should be sending salah and salam upon Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, meaning as-salatul Ibrahimiyyah, meaning what you say at the end after you do it tashahhud, after you say ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh, you say اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. According to some scholars, this is a fard, this is a rukun, you have to do it. Okay? And to stay out of the differences, we're going to count this as a rukun. Okay? So you have to say this in the final tashahhud. Okay? You have to say all of that, the tashahhud and the sending the salah and salam. And again, there's different versions of it that are found in the hadith. So some of them say, اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. Okay? So there are different versions that you can say. Whatever one you say, just make sure you say something, okay? And the last two rukuns that we will discuss is the taslim, saying assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. And specifically, we're talking about the first taslim, okay? The first taslim is a pillar of prayer, because Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, مفتاح الصلاة الطهور وتحريمها التكبير وتحليلها التسليم. That there's takbiratul ihram to enter into your prayer, and to finish your prayer, to close it off, you have to say assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. And specifically, I'm talking about the first assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. This is a rukun. Okay?
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
Okay, so, and by the way, as a reminder, when we talked about the adhan, right, what did we say? It should be the older person who does the adhan, so that we don't run into these kind of situations. But anyways, khair, inshallah. We mentioned the taslim, and then the final pillar, which we will talk about, inshallah. I know we talked about a lot of things. I hope you guys got everything down. It's recorded for a reason. doing all of what we mentioned in order. Okay? So first the takbir, then al-fatiha, then al-ruku', then al-sujud, then sitting between the two sajdas, then the final tashahud. Okay? So all of these are from the pillars of the salah, because Prophet Muhammad said, "Sallu kama ra'aytumuni usalli." Pray the same way that you saw me praying. And because he kept telling the person who did not know how to pray, or he was not praying properly, he kept telling him, then do this, then do ruku', then do sujood. So he's using then, thumma, means like there's a certain order of things. So you have to do all of these in order. That was a lot of information. Are there questions? Hmm? Either you guys are completely lost or you just genuinely don't have any questions. I don't know which one. Yes. Are you not supposed to say what? Say what? After the final tashahhud? No, you don't have to. The final tashahhud, the arkan, is to say tahiyatu lillah until ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu Muhammad Rasulullah, and then Allahumma salli ala Muhammad to the all the way to the end. You can make dua after that. You can make dua, you can do istighfar, you can do whatever you want, but you don't have to say anything after that. Make sense? Question?
Uh, yeah, the lyrics are where they, yeah, like where you have, for example, you have, and then like, what if the plane doesn't have a seatbelt on, but it just doesn't have that place to, like, it just have the papers.
So you can, so in certain planes, if you don't, doesn't have that space, you can see sometimes if the flight attendants are nice enough, they will let you in a small area in the back for the flight attendants, and they will let you pray there. They will let you stand up and go in the ruku' and sujood and other thing. But if they tell you, yeah, sorry, you got to do it in your seat, you do it in your seat. Okay? Questions before I move on? Okay, I think I will move on from here, inshallah. So we'll try to cover the seerah as quickly as we can because we're actually running out of time. So we'll talk about one slide, inshallah, and then we will go upstairs and then come back downstairs again for like 10 minutes or so. We'll quickly wrap up and then we'll take it from there. So last week we talked about Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and his escape plan, right? He escaped from Mecca to the cave of Thawr with Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. We are told that as soon as he arrived to the cave of Thawr, and it's a very rocky area, rocky mountain. It's not like the cave of Thawr that you can go and visit. You can go and visit cave of Thawr today, but it's renovated. It's much different than back in the day. And a cave, it's a dark place. You don't know what's hidden inside. So Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, he told Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, let me enter into the cave first, because you never know what's in the cave. So that if he's so worried, subhanAllah, about Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, that he is like willing to take harm upon himself rather than have it been done to Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. So he went inside, he checked the cave, there's nothing harmful inside it. He saw some holes on the wall, and so he tore his own clothing, and he used it to clog the holes so that no harmful insect or snakes or any scorpions or anything could come out. Except that there were a couple holes that were left, and so he used his own toes to block the hole. And as soon as they entered, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ slept on the lap of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. They had a long night, they're tired, and now they're resting. But as the Prophet Muhammad was sleeping, something stung Abu Bakr as-Siddiq in his toe. It was either like a snake or a scorpion. Something stung him. But Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, subhanAllah, he really didn't want to disturb Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, so he didn't want to make any noise. SubhanAllah, it's like being stabbed with a knife and not wanting to even make a single squeak, not a single sound, just that he does not wake him up. Until, however, the pain was so severe that tears started flowing on the face of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq.